My friends, there comes a moment in every life when the voices of darkness gather. They speak in accusation, in mockery, in hatred. They curse, and when they cursed you, when they pronounced judgment, when they condemned what they did not understand, something else was speaking too. The light does not shout. It does not retaliate. It simply is. It is the eternal yes, spoken by the Father from before all time. It is the Word through whom all things were made, and in the midst of human cruelty, that Word does not fall silent. When they cursed you, the light said, what did it say? It said, you are still mine. It said, darkness cannot have the final word. It said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. The tragedy of the world is that it mistakes noise for truth and power for holiness. But the light whispers through weakness, radiates through wounds, and shines most brilliantly from a cross. When hatred rose, the light spoke mercy. When mockery echoed, the light declared dignity. When death claimed victory, the light proclaimed resurrection. And so the question is not whether the world will curse you. It will. The question is, will you listen to the curse or to the light? If you listen to the curse, you will grow bitter, self-protective, small. But if you listen to the light, you will begin to reflect it. You will love where others hate. You will bless where others curse. You will become luminous with the very fire of God. For the light is not something outside of you. It is Christ within you, the hope of glory. And every time you forgive, every time you bless those who persecute you, every time you bear the weight of love, it is the light speaking again. When they cursed you, I said, you are my beloved. Every human being, at some point in life, encounters rejection. It may come in a harsh word, a look of disdain, a silent exclusion. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through indifference or the subtle turning away of others, and sometimes it arrives violently, through open hatred or public humiliation. To live among human beings is to be vulnerable to misunderstanding. No one is perfectly seen or perfectly known by another. Even the purest intentions can be twisted, the gentlest words misheard, the kindest actions misjudged. And when that happens, when your name is spoken falsely, when your goodness is called evil, something deep within you aches. There is a sting in being cursed, in being spoken against. It cuts not only into reputation, but into the heart itself, because the human heart was made for communion. We were created to be known and loved, to dwell in harmony with others. So when that bond of understanding is broken, it feels like a small death, a fracture in the soul. This experience, though painful, is not foreign to the spiritual life. It is essential to it. The prophets knew it. They spoke truth into a world that often did not want to hear it, and for that they were cursed. The psalmists cried out under the weight of false accusation, yet still turned their lament into prayer. And the saints through the centuries have borne the sting of rejection as part of their journey into light. Rejection and misunderstanding are not interruptions in the spiritual path. They are woven into it. They are the desert through which the heart must walk if it is to find the spring of living water. For when you are misunderstood, the temptation is to defend, to strike back, to prove yourself right. But something deeper calls you, something gentler. It says, be still. Let the truth defend itself. There is a strange grace hidden within rejection. It strips away the illusion that love can be earned by approval. It teaches the soul to love even when love is not returned. It reveals whether your goodness is genuine or dependent on being seen and celebrated. When the world curses you, it is testing what you truly believe about yourself and about God. Do you believe that your worth is determined by the voices of others, or by the one who spoke you into being? Do you believe that truth needs to be shouted, or that it can quietly endure? The pain of being misunderstood can purify love. It can draw you deeper into compassion for those who curse, because you begin to see how lost and wounded they are. You begin to recognize that the curse they speak over you is really the echo of their own darkness. And in that recognition, something extraordinary happens. You begin to bless. You bless not because it feels good, but because blessing is the language of light. It is the quiet defiance of love that refuses to mirror hatred. It is the courage to remain tender in a world that has grown hard. To face misunderstanding and not lose compassion is to participate in the very heart of God. Everyone faces rejection, misunderstanding, and hatred. It is the common fire through which souls are refined. It is not the end of love, but the place where love begins to show its true nature, steady, silent, radiant, unbreakable. Even as curses fall upon you, there is another voice at work. It is not loud, it does not compete, and it does not shout over the darkness, yet it is present, unwavering, persistent. It is the light. While the world hurls its accusations, while harsh words strike like arrows, the light speaks a different language. It does not echo the hatred. It does not return insult for insult. It offers instead a counterword, a word of grace, a word of truth, a word that cannot be broken by human cruelty. This light is always present, even when unseen. It moves in the silence between the curses. It dwells in the spaces where no one is watching. It whispers, and yet its whisper carries more weight than the loudest condemnation. When they curse you, the light says, "You are mine." It reminds you that no insult can erase your worth. It declares that no false word can undo the love of the Creator. It speaks a truth that transcends every lie spoken against you. Even when hatred seems to multiply, when mockery grows loud, the light remains steady. It does not waver. It does not retreat. It shines with a quiet, unassailable power that does not depend on human acknowledgement. The light speaks through creation, in the warmth of the sun, in the rhythm of the seasons, in the steady pulse of life itself. It speaks through the goodness of others, in acts of kindness that defy cruelty. It speaks within you when your heart refuses bitterness, when you choose patience, when you choose mercy over vengeance. There is a profound simultaneity in this. While curses are being spoken, the light is already answering. It is not waiting for the world to repent. It does not pause for recognition. It is already there, shining into the darkness, piercing the shadow with truth. This is why the saints have always taught that suffering can become a place of encounter. For in the moment of insult, in the place of misunderstanding, the light meets us. It shows us that we are not defined by the words of others. It shows us that our dignity is not determined by applause or derision. The light transforms even the pain of cursing into a channel of grace. It teaches patience when rage would seem natural. It teaches humility when pride demands defense. It teaches compassion when hatred would seek retaliation. To hear the light in the midst of curses is to learn a new language. It is the language of endurance, of hope, of quiet courage. It is the language that refuses to participate in the darkness and instead reflects the eternal truth. Even when the world seems deaf to mercy, even when injustice appears to triumph, the light speaks. It is patient, tireless, unshakable. It speaks through every heartbeat, through every choice to act with love instead of resentment. It speaks through every gesture that resists the pull of darkness. The paradox is beautiful. The same moment that curses are cast, the light is present, speaking life over death, blessing over injury, hope over despair. It is the invisible conversation that sustains the soul. It is the quiet, powerful reminder that no human voice can overcome the eternal word of God. The light is always speaking, even when all you hear is the echo of hatred. And if you can listen, truly listen, you will begin to hear it in the rhythm of your breath, in the depth of your heart, and in the stillness that follows every storm. The light is already answering, already loving, already redeeming. The light is not loud. It does not demand attention or seek to overpower. It does not compete with the noise of the world or the clamor of human opinion. It simply is. It is constant, steady, unwavering. Through every season of life, through every storm and shadow, the light endures. It does not flicker at the first sign of adversity. It does not waver when human hearts grow cold. It continues to shine, even when unnoticed, even when rejected. The light is radiant, but its radiance is not harsh. It warms without burning, illuminates without blinding. It does not seek to humiliate or dominate. Its brilliance is gentle, drawing hearts without force. It reveals truth, not through intimidation, but through clarity. The nature of the light is enduring. It does not fade with time or circumstance. It cannot be quenched by human cruelty or misunderstanding. It does not tire, it does not grow weary, and it does not abandon those who are lost or hurting. Its presence is a constant reassurance, a silent yet profound promise of divine fidelity. The light represents something far greater than illumination. It embodies divine love, a love that is patient, kind, and unshakable. It embodies truth, a truth that cannot be corrupted by falsehood or swept away by opinion. It is both tender and powerful, simple and unfathomable, immediate and eternal. In its constancy, the light teaches us about faith. Faith is not the loud proclamation of certainty. Faith is quiet endurance, a steadfast trust that shines even when the darkness surrounds us. Faith is the reflection of the light within, a small flame that persists, grows, and spreads. The light does not force transformation, it invites it. It calls quietly, softly, yet persistently. It works not through fear but through revelation, showing what is true, what is beautiful, what is eternal. It draws us toward goodness, guiding us toward understanding and compassion. The light is patient with human weakness. It does not punish or shame when we stumble. It waits, allowing growth in its own time. It is unending in mercy, unbroken in presence, unfailing in care. It teaches us that divine love is not conditional, not transactional, not dependent on our performance. Even when surrounded by darkness, the light remains radiant. It penetrates the deepest shadows without being consumed. It transforms what is hidden into what is visible, what is cold into what is warm, what is fearful into what is brave. Its radiance reveals not only the world, but also the hidden beauty and potential within ourselves. The light is enduring because it is eternal. It does not originate from the world, nor is it subject to the decay of time. It flows from the source of all life, from the heart of God, and it carries the power to illuminate hearts and minds across every age and place. It is the quiet, patient presence that sustains creation, the steady hand that holds the universe, the tender voice that calls every soul toward home. To dwell in the light is to encounter both love and truth together. It is to know that you are seen, valued, and held. It is to understand that reality itself is grounded not in chaos, not in fear, but in the enduring, radiant, constant presence of divine grace. The light is eternal, unwavering, and entirely trustworthy, a steady guide in a world that often feels uncertain and chaotic. When curses are spoken against you, the light does not respond with anger. It does not strike back, it does not retaliate. It does not attempt to prove itself against the voices of hatred. Instead, the light answers with something far deeper, far more powerful affirmation. It says, "You are still mine." Even when the world condemns you, even when every voice rises against you, the light holds you as beloved. It does not measure your worth by the opinions of others. It does not let the false words of hatred define your identity. You are known, treasured, and held in the embrace of divine love. This affirmation is radical. It is counterintuitive to the human heart, which naturally wants to fight back. We want to argue, to defend, to justify ourselves. We want to repay insult with insult, injury with injury, but the light does not play by these rules. The light's response transforms the very meaning of cursing. What was meant to wound, to diminish, to destroy, becomes an opportunity for grace to shine. The curse cannot penetrate the truth of being loved by the light. No condemnation can erase the voice that whispers, "You are still mine." To receive this affirmation requires a surrender of pride. It asks us to let go of the need to retaliate, the need to prove ourselves right, the need to conquer with human strength. It asks us to stand quietly in the truth of who we are, held by a love that does not depend on performance, reputation, or approval. It asks us to trust that the light's affirmation is stronger than every curse, louder than every accusation. The light's response is patient. It does not rush. It does not demand recognition or immediate gratitude. It simply holds its truth steady, unshaken by the storms of judgment and scorn. It is constant, unwavering, and eternal. When the light says, "You are still mine," it is a call to remember your origin. It reminds you that your identity is rooted not in what others say, but in who created you. It reminds you that even in moments of suffering, rejection, or misunderstanding, your soul is secure. It reminds you that love is stronger than hate, that mercy is more enduring than vengeance, that life is more powerful than death. The light's affirmation also invites us to reflect that same love. If the light does not retaliate, neither are we called to. If the light speaks grace in the midst of insult, we too can speak grace in our responses. If the light blesses where others curse, we are invited to mirror that blessing in our relationships, our words, our actions. This response changes the course of human interaction. It interrupts cycles of revenge. It softens hearts hardened by anger. It opens paths where only walls once existed. It does not diminish justice, but it transforms the soul, cultivating patience, humility, and compassion. It allows us to see that the ultimate power lies not in striking back, but in holding steady in love. Even when pain is acute and wounds are deep, the light affirms, "You are still mine." It speaks over every rejection, every betrayal, every harsh word. It speaks a truth that cannot be shaken, a truth that endures beyond the fleeting judgments of the world. It is a word of hope, a word of mercy, a word that calls every heart back to the source of life and love. To hear it, to trust it, to live within it, is to participate in the transformative power of divine light. It is to discover that even when cursed, even when broken, even when misunderstood, the soul is still held, still cherished, still embraced. And in that affirmation, the light turns what was meant for harm into a wellspring of healing, grace, and life. The cross stands at the center of human history as both a scandal and a revelation. It is the moment when the light is made most visible, not through triumph, but through apparent defeat. Here, the forces of cruelty and misunderstanding reach their height. Here, mockery and hatred seem to have the final word. Here, the innocent is condemned, the good is reviled, and the holy is pierced by the weight of human sin. And yet, in this place of suffering, the light shines with a brilliance that defies comprehension. The cross reveals that true power is not measured by force or domination. True power is the power to endure, the power to forgive, the power to transform even the deepest evil into a channel of grace. Mercy meets mockery at the cross. Where the world intended humiliation, God intended salvation. Where the world offered hatred, the light responded with love. Where the world sought to extinguish life, the light demonstrated resurrection. This paradox is at the heart of the Christian faith. It teaches that apparent defeat can be the stage for ultimate victory. It shows that suffering, when embraced in love, can become the very instrument of redemption. It demonstrates that darkness, no matter how complete it seems, cannot overcome the light. On the cross, the light does not resist the cruelty placed upon it. It does not strike back or demand retribution. It does not plead for relief or escape. Instead, it accepts, it endures, it transforms. It absorbs the pain of the world and radiates mercy back into the very hearts of those who would condemn. The cross also reveals the depth of divine patience. Humanity's rejection, misunderstanding, and violence reach their peak, and yet the light remains steadfast. It speaks not a word of condemnation to the mockers, but a word of reconciliation to all. It turns the act of cruelty into an opportunity for salvation, showing that love can triumph precisely where hatred seems strongest. This moment of ultimate vulnerability redefines strength. Strength is not the ability to dominate or destroy. Strength is the capacity to hold love when the world resists it. Strength is the courage to bless in the presence of insult, to forgive in the presence of injustice, to trust in the face of despair. The cross teaches that suffering and grace are inseparably linked. Pain is not meaningless. It becomes a conduit for healing, a bridge to the divine, a testimony to the enduring power of the light. Through the cross, we see that the world's logic is not God's logic. What seems weak, lowly, or defeated can be the very place where salvation enters the world. Every act of mercy, every word of forgiveness, every gesture of love is a reflection of this cross. It reminds us that we are called to participate in the light's work of transformation. When we endure insult without returning it, when we bless those who curse us, when we choose compassion over revenge, we are standing on the pattern revealed at the cross. Even in moments of deepest despair, the cross declares that the light is never extinguished. It reminds us that God's love is relentless, unshakable, and beyond human calculation. Mercy meets mockery, humility meets pride, love meets hatred, and in that encounter, the world is redeemed. The ultimate revelation of the light occurs not in triumph over others, but in triumph over the darkness within and around us. The cross shows that suffering, when united with love, becomes a powerful witness to the enduring presence of God. It is the eternal proof that the light is stronger than death, deeper than sin, and more radiant than any darkness the world can muster. The world often judges by appearances. It measures power by dominance, success by recognition, and goodness by influence. What it sees as weakness it despises. What it sees as failure it mocks. What it sees as loss it mourns and fears. Yet in the light, these judgments are turned upside down. That which the world calls weakness can become strength. That which the world calls loss can become gain. That which the world calls failure can become the very instrument of redemption. The light sees beyond the surface. It sees the hidden potential within every wound, every struggle, every humble act of faith. It knows that human power is limited, fragile, and fleeting. It knows that the true measure of a soul is not in outward success, but in the depth of its love, the courage of its patience, and the fidelity of its hope. When a person is mocked or cast aside, when the world declares them insignificant, the light is already at work. It transforms humiliation into humility, bitterness into mercy, and fear into courage. It does not erase the suffering, but it redeems it, giving it a purpose beyond human comprehension. The smallest gestures, the quietest endurance, the gentlest kindnesses, all become vessels of transformation in the light. Consider the cross. What the world perceived as defeat, shame, and weakness became the very instrument of salvation. What seemed powerless became the power of God revealed. The ultimate triumph emerged not from force or coercion, but from surrender, obedience, and love. This is the paradox the light teaches. The things that seem least in the eyes of the world are often greatest in the eyes of God. Reversal of meaning is at work in every act of mercy. When one forgives an enemy, the world may call it foolish. When one blesses those who curse, the world may call it weakness. But in the light, these acts are luminous with divine strength. They break cycles of hatred, heal wounds, and create paths for transformation. Even personal loss can be transformed in the light. Grief that seems unbearable becomes a deeper empathy for others. Failure that seems final becomes a lesson in resilience and humility. Abandonment that seems cruel becomes an invitation to rely more fully on God's presence and love. In every apparent deficit, the light discovers a hidden opportunity for growth and sanctification. The light invites us to see the world differently. It calls us to look past appearances, past judgments, past human applause or condemnation. It asks us to recognize the potential in what seems weak or lowly. It shows that vulnerability is not a flaw, but a doorway to intimacy with God. It shows that suffering is not meaningless, but a channel for grace. Reversal of meaning also teaches patience. It reminds us that immediate outcomes do not define eternal significance. What appears lost today may be the seed of tomorrow's transformation. What appears futile may be shaping a heart capable of extraordinary love and mercy. In the light, the criteria of the world are not final. Power is redefined, success is reimagined, and weakness is elevated. Even the humblest, most overlooked moments become sacred, charged with the potential to touch hearts and change lives. The light reveals the hidden glory within every shadow, the unseen fruit within every trial, and the eternal value within every act of faithful endurance. Thus, what the world deems insignificant is often the very thing God uses to bring healing and renewal. The light transforms suffering into grace, humility into strength, and loss into a channel of divine abundance. It teaches that nothing in human life is wasted when seen and held by the eternal truth of love. And in this reversal of meaning, the soul learns to trust not in appearances, but in the quiet, luminous work of God in every circumstance. To behold the light is not enough. To admire its radiance, to marvel at its constancy, to be comforted by its presence. These are gifts, but they are only the beginning. The light calls us not simply to witness, but to participate. It calls us to embody what we have seen, to live it, to let it flow through our words, our actions, our very being. Believers are invited to reflect the light, not as a faint echo, but as a living presence in the world. We are called to allow the light to shape our responses, to guide our decisions, to transform the way we relate to others. It is a call to action as much as a call to contemplation. It is a call to be conduits of grace, channels of mercy, bearers of peace. When the world responds with hatred, the light invites us to respond with blessing. When we are mocked, belittled, or misunderstood, we are called to return compassion rather than bitterness. When cruelty seeks to wound, the light calls us to heal. When injustice threatens to dominate, we are invited to speak truth with gentleness and courage. This imitation of the light requires courage. It asks us to resist the natural instinct for retaliation. It challenges us to refuse the easy path of anger, resentment, or judgment. It demands patience, humility, and a steadfast trust in the unseen work of God. It is not passive, but active, a deliberate turning toward love even when it seems counterintuitive. The call to imitate the light is also a call to empathy. It asks us to see beyond the surface of those who curse, harm, or reject us. It asks us to recognize the brokenness, fear, and confusion that lie behind their actions. In doing so, we discover the capacity to respond with mercy, to bless where others would curse, and to love where others would hate. Imitating the light transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. Every gesture of kindness, every act of forgiveness, every word spoken in patience and understanding becomes a reflection of the divine. Even small acts of compassion ripple outward, touching hearts we may never see, inspiring hope in ways we cannot measure. The light works through our willingness to embody it, turning our lives into living testimonies of grace. It is a call to consistency. Just as the light never wavers, neither should our commitment to reflect it. It is easy to be kind when conditions are favorable. It is easy to forgive when offenses are small. But true imitation requires steadfastness when life is difficult, when insults sting, when darkness surrounds. In these moments, the light shines most clearly through us. The call to imitate the light is not a burden, but an invitation to participate in the work of God. It is an invitation to become co-creators of beauty, justice, and mercy in a world too often dominated by darkness. It asks us to embody hope, to be agents of reconciliation, and to bring illumination wherever shadows fall. This imitation is transformative, not only for the world but for the self. As we learn to respond with blessing and love, our hearts are purified. Bitterness gives way to compassion, fear gives way to courage, and despair gives way to hope. We become, in small but real ways, vessels of the light we have received. To imitate the light is to live a life that resists the logic of the world. It is to see beyond the power of curses, beyond the allure of revenge, beyond the fleeting judgment of others. It is to anchor oneself in eternal truth, to reflect mercy in the midst of cruelty, and to shine with love in the face of hatred. It is the high calling of the believer, the daily work of the soul, and the path to becoming a living witness of divine radiance. There is a subtle danger in hearing the curse and allowing it to take root within the heart. Human nature is drawn to protect itself, to defend, to respond to insult with reaction. Yet when resentment grows, when anger is nurtured, it begins to dim the inner light. The very radiance that illuminates the soul is clouded by bitterness, obscured by grievance, and weakened by fear. Self-protection, though instinctive, can become a prison. When the heart is consumed with guarding itself, it shuts out the warmth of mercy. It closes the ears to the quiet voice of grace. It hardens the mind against the truth of love and blinds the spirit to the reality of divine presence. In attempting to shield itself, the soul often becomes the captive of the darkness it seeks to avoid. Listening to the curse can distort perception. Every insult begins to echo endlessly, magnified and reshaped in the imagination. Every slight, every mockery, every judgment becomes a proof of the world's hostility. The soul begins to see enemies everywhere, and trust, once natural, becomes a fragile, fleeting thing. Resentment and self-protection are subtle thieves. They do not announce themselves loudly. They creep in silently, disguised as prudence or righteous indignation. Yet they steal the clarity of vision, the freedom of the heart, and the courage to act with love. They transform perception, making the world appear darker than it truly is, and the soul weaker than it truly is. Spiritual blindness is the natural consequence of listening too closely to the curse. The light within, which is patient, gentle, and enduring, is gradually overshadowed by the internal storm of anger and fear. The soul loses its ability to discern truth from falsehood, kindness from cruelty, justice from revenge. It begins to measure worth, not by divine love, but by human opinion and the fleeting verdicts of others. Allowing the curse to dominate leads to isolation. The heart withdraws from others, fearing further harm. It erects walls that block both human affection and divine guidance. Connection is lost, not because the world is entirely cruel, but because the heart has closed itself off to the light. In that closing, the soul becomes fragile, reactive, and unable to bear the weight of grace. Even the smallest seed of resentment can grow into a forest of darkness if left unchecked. It nourishes bitterness, which breeds suspicion. Suspicion fosters anger, and anger hardens into judgment. The heart becomes a mirror of the curse, reflecting the world's hostility rather than the light's truth. The danger is that one begins to mistake self-protection for wisdom. One believes that defensiveness is prudence, that anger is justice, that withdrawal is safety. But these are illusions. They are ways the curse seeks to claim the soul, to turn its energy inward in fear and bitterness rather than outward in love and mercy. To resist the curse requires vigilance and courage. It demands constant attention to the movements of the heart and mind. It calls for discernment, the ability to notice when anger or resentment is taking root, and the willingness to surrender it to the light. It calls for trust in the power of grace to heal, restore, and illuminate. The soul that succumbs to the curse loses more than peace. It loses perspective. It loses the capacity to see God's hand in suffering, the potential for growth in adversity, and the beauty of mercy in the face of hatred. Listening too closely to curses blinds the spirit to its own calling, dims the inner radiance that can shine even in darkness, and silences the whisper of divine truth. The curse may be loud, but the light is patient. The light waits for the soul to turn from resentment. The light waits for the heart to open, for forgiveness to take root, for trust to rise above fear. But the longer the soul listens to the curse, the heavier the shadow grows, and the harder it becomes to see the eternal truth shining within. The light is not only outside of us, it dwells within the very depths of the soul. It is not a distant phenomenon, observed from afar, but an intimate presence, quietly transforming from the inside out. It is a mystery, a hidden reality that cannot be fully grasped by the intellect alone, yet it can be experienced in the life of the heart. Inner illumination begins subtly. It does not announce itself with thunder or spectacle. It enters through moments of stillness, through quiet prayer, through acts of love that go unnoticed. It touches the soul in ways that may feel ordinary at first, but over time, its presence becomes radiant, undeniable, and transformative. The soul that receives this light begins to change. It learns to see the world differently, through the lens of mercy and compassion rather than fear and judgment. It learns to hear the voices of grace beneath the noise of resentment and anger. It begins to reflect the divine in subtle ways, through patience in trial, gentleness in response, and steadfastness in faith. This illumination is not the work of human effort alone. It is a gift, a divine mystery, a grace freely given. Yet the soul must cooperate, opening itself to the presence that dwells within. The more it yields, the more it allows the light to shine, the more it is transformed. Resistance dims the radiance, but surrender invites brilliance. The light within turns ordinary moments into opportunities for holiness. A kind word, a gentle gesture, a moment of self-restraint becomes luminous when the soul is attuned to the inner light. Even suffering, when united with patience and love, becomes a source of radiance, illuminating both the self and the world. The soul becomes a beacon, not by its own power, but by the reflection of the light it carries within. Inner illumination transforms perception. It teaches the soul to see beyond appearances, beyond immediate circumstances, beyond human judgment. It allows one to perceive the presence of God in every encounter, to recognize the hidden potential for goodness even in places of darkness. It is the quiet knowing that the soul is never alone, that divine radiance continually surrounds, sustains, and guides. The process is gradual, mysterious, and often imperceptible. At times, the soul may not notice its own growth, the subtle ways in which the light reshapes desires, thoughts, and intentions. Yet over time, transformation becomes evident. Character softens, patience deepens, love expands, and the soul becomes increasingly capable of reflecting the divine presence. The light within is also a source of resilience. In moments of trial, fear, or grief, it offers clarity, courage, and hope. It is a steady flame in the midst of chaos, a quiet center in the swirl of life's challenges. It reminds the soul of its eternal origin, its infinite worth, and its unbreakable connection to the source of all goodness. Inner illumination calls for attention and care. The soul must nurture this light through prayer, reflection, acts of charity, and the conscious pursuit of virtue. Neglect, distraction, or surrender to bitterness can obscure its radiance. But with vigilance and love, the light grows stronger, deeper, and more radiant, transforming the entire being. Ultimately, The soul that embraces inner illumination becomes a living reflection of divine radiance. Its presence brings warmth, clarity, and hope to those around it. It participates in the ongoing work of creation and redemption, allowing the invisible light of God to shine visibly through human life. This is the mystery and the wonder of inner illumination, that the divine does not merely dwell outside us, but within, turning ordinary lives into vessels of extraordinary grace. No curse can overcome it. No hatred can extinguish it. No darkness, no matter how deep, can silence the light, for the light carries within it a truth that is eternal, unshakable, and invincible. It is the truth that every soul is held, cherished, and called into being by a love that cannot fail. The final word of the light is not judgment, it is not vengeance, it is not condemnation, it is love, a love that sees past sin, past weakness, past failure, a love that reaches into the depths of the human heart and declares, "You are beloved." This love is patient. It waits for the soul to turn, to awaken, to receive the truth. It does not force or coerce, but it is relentless in its fidelity. Even when the world rejects, mocks, or curses, this love endures. It never grows weary, it never abandons, it never forgets. Hatred may rise and rage, it may seem victorious for a time, as shadows stretch across the human heart, but the light's final word is louder than every shout of anger. Its voice penetrates the deepest darkness, bringing clarity where confusion reigns, hope where despair threatens, and mercy where judgment would prevail. The light declares belovedness. It speaks to every soul, regardless of circumstance, regardless of failure, regardless of rejection. You are mine, you are precious, you are loved beyond measure. No human curse can alter this reality. No accusation can negate it. No act of cruelty can diminish it. This love is transformative. It does not leave the soul unchanged. It heals wounds, restores dignity, and offers a vision of life that transcends the world's logic. It teaches that the ultimate measure of a person is not the judgment of others, but the truth of their being as seen by God. It illuminates the path of forgiveness, guiding hearts to bless even when cursed, to forgive even when wounded, to hope even when despair threatens. The final word of the light is also resurrection. It is the promise that death, defeat, and failure are not the end. It is the assurance that every act of love, every gesture of mercy, every spark of goodness participates in an eternal victory. Even when life seems lost, even when hope seems extinguished, the light proclaims life. It calls forth new beginnings, renewal, and the ultimate triumph of grace. This is the paradox of the light. It is most present where the world expects defeat. It speaks most clearly in the places of suffering, misunderstanding, and rejection. It overturns human expectations and shows that true power lies not in destruction, but in mercy, not in revenge, but in forgiveness, not in fear, but in love. The final word is love because love is eternal. It is stronger than every curse, greater than every act of hatred, brighter than every shadow. It is the measure of reality, the foundation of creation, the essence of the divine. It is the call to which every soul responds, the truth to which every heart is summoned. To hear the final word of the light is to be set free. It lifts the soul above resentment, fear, and despair. It invites the heart to participate in the work of mercy, reconciliation, and blessing. It reminds us that no matter what the world says, no matter what the darkness threatens, we are beloved and life in the truest sense always triumphs. The final word is love. It is the answer to every curse, the remedy for every wound, the victory over every shadow. It is the eternal proclamation of God over every human soul. You are mine, you are cherished, you are held in my love, and in this love you shall rise. And so, my friends, let us walk in the light. Let us allow it to dwell within us to guide our words, our thoughts, and our actions. When the world curses, let us bless. When hatred rises, let us love. When darkness threatens, let us shine. For the light has spoken over each of us, Asterisk, you are beloved, and you are called to life. Asterisk. May we carry that truth into every corner of our lives, reflecting mercy where there is cruelty, hope where there is despair, and love where there is rejection. In doing so, we participate in the eternal story of redemption, becoming living witnesses to the power of the light. And at the end of every trial, every wound, every shadow, the final word will remain: love triumphs, life endures, and you are held forever in the embrace of the divine. Let us go forth, radiant with that light, and let the world see through us the unquenchable power of love.